I'm Autumn Brown, and I don't give a fuck how you feel.
I'm Adrienne Marie Brown, and I really care.
And this is How to Survive the End of the World.
Our podcast about learning from apocalypse with grace, rigor, and curiosity.
As a reminder, we have no ads. We are listener supported.
So join our Patreon for exclusive content.
Exclusive. Why am I doing that on the microphone? That's inappropriate.
I don't know, but it's very like Autumn, front woman of a soul pop band kind
Right.
of energy.
It's giving Sabrina Carpenter.
Oh my God, I'm working late.
Because I'm a singer. My girls were asking me this morning if I would take them, if I had the choice, would I take them to her tour, despite the controversy of how sexy her show is. And I was like, you know, I'd really have to think about that one. But I did take you guys to Beyonce.
Yeah. Like, we did go into Beyonce's entire vagina, so I guess we're maybe okay.
Exactly.
I was like, yeah. I feel like, formative concert, like sexiness in formative concerts is actually a big part of how I formed my sexuality and my gender understanding.
Yeah. I mean, like, pop is about sex.
Yeah. I'm just like, oh, what would I be if it wasn't like Janet Jackson and Madonna and Paula Abdul and all these people like telling me like, push it up, push it out, shake it out.
Yeah. All the things.
Yeah.
How are you today? And how are you?
And
today?
how am I? How am I today? So I'm really great. I have had a life-changing week. I've had one of these life-changing weeks where like I've been working on a lot of things for a long time, but particularly 2 years, I've been like grinding on figuring out like, how do I make all my life work, you know? And this week it's all landing. So it's like a major hire that I've needed is landing. A book deal that I've been like, I'm so excited to be moving in the world has landed. Like all these like pieces of relationship are clarifying and landing. Like, I don't know. It just, I feel like really, I'm like, oh, my root system, like the thing that I've invested in for the last 2 years, I made good decisions and now it's taking root. And I feel that, and I keep noticing, I keep being in conversation with people about like what it feels like to be having a good life in a hard time.
Yeah.
And how I look back and I'm like, like so many of the people I think of as freedom fighters or people I look up to throughout history, they were people who fundamentally they were figuring out like how to have a good life in a hard time. And there were people who were like, I'm still writing down about my life. It still matters to me. I'm still learning things. I have wisdom to do, but I'm like, it's not like James Baldwin was like, it's easy peasy over here. It's not like Harriet Tubman was like floating down a river. It's just like, I'm making a life of freedom and creativity inside of a hard time. I'm still finding love and goodness inside of a hard time. And today I got to have 2 really beautiful conversations, like interviews with other people. Mm-hmm. And both of them just have this like cosmic aspect to them where I'm like, oh, look at our mycelial threading together about how we're still stardust and there's still so much good happening. So that's how I'm doing coming into today. Plus, I didn't really do my hair, which to me, that always feels like a winning thing. I'm like, I didn't even have to do my hair to get my work done today.
Whoa, so that's real.
Je suis okay. How about you?
Je suis okay. I really like
and I started learning Arabic on Duolingo.
Okay.
I know. It feels really fun.
I see.
I was like, what's the most different thing I could try to stretch my brain to do? And I was like, how about something where I have no idea what the letters are?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you naming James Baldwin, especially because I do think it's so helpful to think about artists right now who still chose to make a life out of making art despite the horrors.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's so awesome to just always keep in mind that, like, what are we fighting for? We're actually fighting for the right to be able to be artists in a way, like the thing that humans are meant to do. I'm doing okay at the moment. I'm having kind of I'm having a parental time.
It's a parental time.
It is a parental time. One of those moments of just trying to kind of like, how do I both do my work and show up for my children, and how do I show up for my children without rescuing them? You know what I mean? Like, how do I want to, like, you know, I'm always looking for, like, where is the pocket that I can get into where I really feel like I'm both fulfilling my commitments as a parent and also feel like really good about my parenting, but feel like it's not overtaking my other goals.
That's right. That's right.
So it's one of those days today. I've also been having a really interesting week around anxiety in my body, and getting to really be in an exploration of what anxiety does to me and what provokes it in absence of a crisis or some kind of really, really scary thing provoking it.
Oh.
So I'm getting to actually just be in an exploration of it through therapy, through conversations with dear ones, through just like my own sort of like, oh, I'm just noticing a reaction that I'm having to this thing that's like not actually happening now, and getting to really explore it. And noticing how powerful anxiety is. Oh, and it was deep too, because I've been in this like exploration. And then one of my kids last night was like, multiple times across the afternoon and evening, was like, I'm having such intense anxiety today. And so that was really, it was just really an interesting kind of mirroring to be like, oh, I'm in this deep exploration of mine. And then one of my kids is like in a noticing of what's happening inside of them. You know, it's like,
I love that. When do you think you learned what anxiety was?
Definitely not when I was a teenager.
I know.
You know, I think I was well into my adulthood before I started learning about anxiety. And some of that must be like, I mean, there was a tide that shifted in when we were all in our 20s and 30s around some of this stuff just entering mainstream culture. Partly, I think about the sort of demystification of therapy, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, it's been, but for me, I think that even with that, over my 20s and 30s, even if I like was aware of anxiety, I didn't really identify as someone who struggled with it. And so it's been a pretty recent development for me, you know, as you know, to really own that, like, this is actually something that's happening inside of my body. And there are times where it feels like actually beyond my capacity to navigate. And that's been a very humbling thing for me to really like. I'm just turned 41 a couple of months ago, and I'm just now in my life really leaning into like having to own and recognize those places where I'm like, I can't tolerate this on my own. I need help.
Yeah.
I need help.
Clarity.
Yeah.
Well, and I really appreciate this, you know, because I feel similarly that for the longest time I was like, oh, I don't have anxiety, but I sure know when people do. And then realizing
these motherfuckers out here.
Yeah, they're anxious. They're so anxious. But then what I started having this other noticing that I was like, oh, that's coping mechanisms. So some people cope with their anxiety by like talking it out, you know, being like, oh my God, I'm really worried about this, whatever thing. And I like push away from that. But my coping mechanism has been to numb it or to quiet it or to top it, to control it. And so I thought that I was like, I don't have that. Like, but really with therapy, it's been like, oh no, I'm just like, why are those people just letting it all show like that? Like, what the heck, you know? And then learning like, how do I get up under that judgment? Because I'm like, oh, that's for me. It's like, why am I feeling this way? Why is my brain looping this way? Why is this happening? And then dropping under that and being like, oh, I'm anxious and there's good reason for it. And there's things I can do. Right. It's exciting to see you wrestle, tussle with it. Yeah. And then there was something as you were talking about the babies, the fine line you're walking with them, that I just wanted to say, to big up to you. Because I keep thinking about, like, when you're teaching a kid to ride a bike and it's like you're holding on to them you're holding on to them and they're like, I cannot do this without you. And you have to figure out, like,
what's the moment?
I was like, I'm not going to let you go if I think you're going to fall over right away. Bad parenting. But I do have to figure out the moment when I can let you go. And, like, can I keep up with you enough to, like, help you if you're like, I don't know how to stop, or, whatever is happening there. Right.
Right.
And I just see you do that balance so well with your kids, where they're like, I need you. And you're like, I'm here, but I think you've got this,
Right.
Like, there's such a way that, I think you've got this. And if you don't, I'm here, I got you. But I think you do. And,
I feel like I'm getting better at, thank you for that affirmation. I do think I'm getting better at being able to just remind them to try a coping skill first.
Yes. Yes.
And oftentimes what I notice with them too is, like, oftentimes, even if they don't try the thing that I'm suggesting, just me giving them the space to go figure something out on their own then means that they're off, like the bike is going. But it's funny. I love that you gave that example specifically because one of my children taught herself how to ride a bike and never literally just climbed on it and rode. And it's funny. It's really funny to have kids. I mean, it's funny. Kids are amazing and so special, but it's especially funny when you have, like, multiple kids who their issues present in really different ways. And so, like, with one kid, it might be really clear the type of support that this person needs. And then with another kid, it's like, I have no fucking idea what you need, like because you're so independent, or you're so, your brain works so differently than mine, like as you know well, like, the personality differences between my three kids are striking.
Biodivergent as fuck.
Truly. Anyway, so that's how I am coming into this call today. Yay. And excited for us to pick up our sister-to-sister solidarity conversation.
Me too.
I'm excited about what we put out into the world already, that we kind of let ourselves show a little bit of, like, where do we get turned around and lost when trying to figure out this stuff, getting to be, I don't know, just getting to be, like I said in the last episode, that we are human beings also. We also get confused. We also don't know what to do. Yeah. And I felt really gratified about, like, the fact that we got to just be confused together and then find our way together. Yeah. And how it brought us closer in that moment to each other to be like, wait, what? And feel hurt feelings and then work our way through it. And I just feel proud of us.
Me too. It feels like the practice of relationship, right? Like, I'm like, oh, it's a practice. When I think about solidarity, I think actually this is what I mean, right? Is being like, like, we have different points of view. We might be heading to slightly different places or have some nuances on, like, how we get there and all that. And there's conflict that will arise, or difference, tension will arise, and, like, how to hold the tension, how to turn and be like, oh, the tension is interesting, and the tension will teach us something. And, but it might take a few tears, or it might take a little time, or it might take some deeper breaths. But that act of even being able to be like, what is this tension?
Right.
First.
Right.
And how do we, how do we navigate it together as human bodies?
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think was really interesting about our last conversation that I would like to use as, like, a way into this conversation is the presence of mutual activation in our nervous systems, despite being in two physically different locations, separated by thousands of miles. Now, obviously, there's a lot that, like, there's a there's a field that we share that has to do with our relationship. There's a field that we share that has to do with being related to each other.
Yeah.
Now that I've been listening to the telepathy tapes, I'm like, there's also a whole other field that we share.
Exactly.
There's the field that we share.
The literal field.
You know, there was a moment in the conversation, right, where we realized that we were actually, the part of how we identified the tension was realizing that there was mutual activation happening.
Yes.
And I think it just makes me wonder about the opportunity of this time when, you know, we talk a lot. I think everyone's talking and thinking a lot about how stressful this time period is.
Yes.
How much emotional and psychological and physiological stress many of us are under as a result of just the chaos that is being intentionally created by those who've been charged with quote unquote governance. And that's the chaos is inducing stress, right? But the way the stress is actually experienced by the nervous system, right, is it's a physiological process. And it's a physiological process that we are all sharing right now.
Yes.
Regardless of how tuned in or aware we are of it, we're all sharing in this like mutual activation process. Now, you made this really elegant point when we were talking last about the one thing that we know that the right is really good at is leveraging people's fear, right? Is leveraging the conditions of chaos in order to get people on board with their vision and plan, right?
Yeah.
So, and we were, you know, part of where we were going, like part of where the tension and juiciness happened, right, was around that, like, you know, what are we learning from the opposition? But where I want to go with it today is like, right, okay, if their move is to weaponize people's fear against them to make them do things that align with their vision, we know that what is happening physiologically is that our people are very, very activated right now. What do we do with that information? You know, and what is the solidarity move that we make with the information of, oh, we're all in a state of activation?
Yes. Oh, that's good, sister. So
Thank you.
Two things like come up as I listen to you. One, you saw Inside Out too?
I did.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So I was thinking about anxiety and how anxiety reaches a fever pitch of crisis. And when the anxiety is in a fever pitch of crisis, literally none of the other emotions can even come and touch the control board of that system.
Right. Because she's
like, I'm like literally creating a field of anxiety that no one else can even penetrate. And so I was thinking about that I was like, right, like right now it makes a lot of sense that we're in an active anxiety field where it's like trying to think about everything bad that's going to happen and everything bad that is happening and everything bad that's being fortified. And like, it's just like, whoa, there's all this anxiety. And it's like anxiety thinks that just being anxious and thinking about all the worst possible things is the solution. And they're like, I'm going to do that as fast as I can. So that was the first thing that came up, was like
every single possible bad outcome and control for it.
Exactly. Right. So I'm like, oh, it's not just that we're in a state of activation, but it's an activation that has this panicked, urgent energy to it. That's like, I'm triggered and I'm triggered. And I think if I can just figure out the worst possible thing and somehow case study and stop it, you know, that'll be the way. And then the other thing that came up as you asked that question was there's something about false solidarity and real solidarity that I think is the response to this, right? Because I'm like, the way the right does this, I think, is that they offer a false solidarity to people where they're like, we don't actually need you to get on board with our vision of Project 2025, or you don't even really, you know, so many of the people who are like, I voted for Trump or whatever, they don't even actually know about that part of the vision, right? What they know is that someone came and was like, oh, you want cheaper eggs? I'm going to give you that. Oh, you want to change? I'm going to give you that. Oh, you think this? I'm going to give you that. You hate these people telling you can't say the R word or the N word or something? I'm going to make you so you can. right? They're just like, what, anything you want, I'll tell you, I'm going to give it to you. And I create a false sense of solidarity amongst all these disparate
You
needs.
and I are the same. We want the same thing.
You're the same and we want the same thing, but it's false. And that shows in like just this first month and a half, 2 months or whatever of actual policy making from the right, as all those things fell away very quickly. And they're like, we don't actually give a fuck about any of the things we said that we were going to take care of for you. We've got this other vision. So the false solidarity starts to crumble.
Right.
And I think one of the things we're trying to figure out is how do we then offer real solidarity, where I'm like, some of your anxiety is righteous. Like, just like it is when it's happening in your body, right? That's like, oh, I am feeling activated. And that activation is coming from some real need. Like, is my kid safe? Is my kid okay? Is my kid anxious? Or, is my, for me, I'm just like, is everyone in my family alive? Okay. Alive. Some of them are on a flight. Is that okay? I have reason to feel anxious around that right now. And so I'm like, how do I offer real solidarity to myself and then real solidarity to other people who are like, I am thinking about the worst case scenario right now. I'm like, what is real solidarity that attends to real threats, right? Where it's not like just flip off that anxiety, but it's like, how do we harness all of that? Because that's just the energy of life. I'm always like, all of the emotions are the energy of life moving through us, trying to move towards life. And that, I don't know, but that movie made me feel so compassionate towards the anxiety in me. That was like, oh, you're trying to take care of me. And I think in our mass activation right now, if you listen like 1 layer, 2 layers under it all, everybody's like, I care about the parks. I care about the ocean. I care about these immigrants. I care about trans people. I care about Black people. I care. I love. I want so much more. There's so much tenderness and love and care in there.
Right.
And right now I feel like we haven't figured out how do we drop through the chaotic field of anxiety into that, like, hold on, get with me. You care about something, and together we're going to figure out how we meaningfully address the thing you care about.
Well, and I do think, I'm so glad you brought it there, because I think that part of it is anxiety. I always say anxiety is a time traveling emotion, right?
Oh, yes.
Like when you're inside it, it disconnects you from the current timeline often. It feels like it's endless, like it's never going to, like the feeling you're in does not have an end. Right. And it's connecting you across your lifespan to other horrible moments, right? And so, it's like, and
bad,
that,
gonna be bad.
Been bad, gonna be bad. and that, but what's interesting about that is that also that, the thing about portals is they're not all good. And so, it's like your anxiety portal is not the same as your visionary transgressive portal. And so, right. And it can, I feel like I've gotten so many gifts from the anxiety portal, but it's not like a portal I would opt into. And I think part of it is because it's so isolated in there. When I'm in my anxiety, it's just
Yes.
It's like so the thing you were naming about like, I care about parks, I care about this, I care about that. I think when we're in anxiety, it's like, I feel this, but no one else does. Yeah. There can be that feeling of like, I'm literally like flying through this portal and I can't even feel anybody else. I can only feel my fear of loss around XYZ, fill in the blank. And so there is something, it feels like, about the dropping down solidarity move is about how do we figure out how to actually connect to other people from within our fear state.
That's right. And I think also, so much of how social media functions is it's like, we'll just bring you together to feel fear together. Right. We'll bring you together to feel anxiety together.
I'm afraid.
I am also afraid, but there's a way that people are like battling with each other with it, right? They're like, y'all are not paying enough attention to this thing that I'm scared about. Do you even know about this thing that I'm scared about? And like, there's this, right? We used to call it the Oppression Olympics, but now it's like sort of the crisis ceremony or something. I don't know. But it's like this sense of, we have to compete with each other for the small bits of attention we can get because that attention is somehow going to fix what we're anxious about.
Right.
So we get in these loops where we're just gathering together around our crisis. And I remember this used to be one of my favorite moves when I was facilitating, was being like, okay, y'all have laid out the crisis. Sometimes you would call it your political landscape or whatever you would call it, but you've laid out the crisis and what you're worried about and what's coming. And it's good. We have a sense of that now. Now, what is it we can do that we will do? And I really feel, for me, like in my personal life, that is always the way I drop myself out of anxiety, is I'm like, what can I do that I will do? And then with whom, right? So I have this feeling of like,
that.
If I'm looking at the world and I'm like, there's nothing I'm going to do about this, then I'm like, okay, then stop looping around it. You're not going to do anything about that. Sometimes it's like I'm thinking about a conversation I had with someone. I'm like, girl, you're never going back and clarifying it with them. So stop having the conversation in your head. Just leave it be, right?
Totally.
Same thing for the collective. I'm like, we're all watching this. And, I see these people laughing because they're like, look at these Congress people coming on and being like, hey, you guys, that's not democracy. It's like, babes, your job is to go handle that. Stop coming and tweeting us. Go handle it. That's your job. What are you going to do that you
What are you
can do?
going to do?
You're telling me about something that I have significantly less access to doing anything about than you do. So do something, right?
Right.
But then what makes movements powerful is when a lot of people are like, wait, we can stop this from happening and we will stop it from happening. And so that's how South Korea impeached their president. That's how the French Revolution happens. There's people, people are like, wait, we can and we will, and we're going to do it with others.
I love what can I do that I will do, because it also implies there's things I could do that I won't do.
There's so many things I can do that I won't do. That's true for all. And that, because I always think, I'm like, don't worry about the stuff you can't do, right? Like, I'm not a Supreme Court justice. I can't do that.
Right.
But I can protest against what the Supreme Court is doing, or I can and will, get behind Chase Strangio when they're going to legislate, or whatever they call it when you, what do you do? Argue a case.
Argue.
Thank you. I was like, what do you call? See, I don't even know that, because that's not something I can do.
I'm so not a lawyer that I don't even know what they do.
I was like, I'm like what's the opposite of lawyer? I'm that artist. Anyway, so, right. But I think about this piece that I'm like, it's actually been the thing I get most frustrated about with people, where I'm like, you're looking at that and you could do something about it, but you won't. And because you won't, it creates a trend of so many people who won't, that apathy becomes our collective shape. Apathy and anxiety together is a stagnant pond, right? And they feed each other, but only each other. It's just like, let's loop right here. It's bad, but I'm going to sit on my couch. It's bad, but I'm just going to watch another episode of this. It's bad. And, but I'm going to doom scroll and like feel like I'm in solidarity with other people, but no one's doing anything. So I think so much of it is like, how do we move into what we can and will do with others?
It's an interesting use of the word apathy in this context, because I think you're right that even if people feel like what they're doing is caring, their behavior, the behavior that they're exhibiting, if they're not taking action, is the behavior of apathy, which is again, we talked about this before on the show, that one of the challenges of the social networking platforms that we have is that they activate our nervous systems in particular ways that make us feel like we're doing something because of the way that they're engaging with our brains and bodies. And so I really want to hold out that compassion for people who have been tricked into thinking that they're doing something every day because of the actual nervous system experience of consuming information via the internet, right? It's like, it's a real thing. But those consumption experiences as drivers of both anxiety and lack of activity or apathetic behavior feels like a really important piece, because then it's like, okay, right, what is the guide then for how to exit that territory, right? Because really what's happening at this point is we're having to exit a kind of invented space and enter the real territory of change work again, which feels very risky because we don't necessarily know who is there.
Yes.
Like, who is there in geographic reality with us, who is there in, you know, who is there in political reality with us, like who is in our actual who is in our actual sphere of influence. And that's sometimes, you know, I don't mean to be like all organizer one-on-one on the podcast about this, but like actually that is a place to begin. If people are wondering, you know, where do I begin to be in solidarity? One of the places to begin is actually to map out who is in your sphere of influence and who is in your sphere of actual contact, right? You know, if you sit down and really think about, especially if you take off the table, just for the sake of the experiment, who is in my sphere of contact via the internet, and you put only on the table who is in my sphere of people I can actually have meaningful contact with in my life. That's a different looking map. It just is. Yeah, but I think a more useful map. I think it's actually less overwhelming. You know what I mean?
No, I think it's so much less overwhelming. Like for years, I feel like that's the thing. I'm like, when you're feeling overwhelmed by what's happening in the world, bring your attention back down to your own community, the people you actually know, and something you could do at that level or that place. So absolutely that. And something just popped up as you were talking, which was like, this is where the mycelium, you know, and the Underground Railroad and like the idea of doing work underground really comes into play. That I'm like, when we're in a time where the ultimate act of solidarity is not about grandstanding or virtue signaling or anything that you could perform in front of the public, but it's actually about doing things that you're literally intentionally not talking about or claiming or broadcasting to other people you are doing. You know, there are people who are like, we are going to make sure that folks have a place to stay so they don't get deported. We are going to make sure that people have a place to get their medicine, even if we have to figure out, you know, covert ways to get medicine to them. We're going to figure out these things that are underground behaviors, but it's like mycelial. So I'm like, oh yeah, like if I literally imagine myself going from being an above ground networking creature to being like, I have to go underground. Yes. And I'm like, I have to literally learn a different way of being. I'm not trying to be seen by everyone. So my measure of success can't be how many people see me existing as a little node of connection. My measure of success has to be how authentic is each connection that I have. And by authentic, I mean, are real resources able to flow through the connection? Like is real change, is real energetic flow, is real solidarity, loyalty. And I mean, I keep getting like so tangible. I'm like, could this person be a source of food for me? Could I be a source of food for them?
Literally.
Could this person be a source of shelter for me? Could I be a source of shelter for them? You know, like as a part of a mycelial thread, that's the level at which I want to be operating. And then those moments of revolution or those moments when like something comes above ground, it's like, that's just our mushroom. That's just the fruit, but they can't even see all the connections we actually have that yield those fruiting bodies.
Right. And we don't know. It's like, again, one of the reasons why it actually serves us to work at the hyperist local level.
Hyperist local, baby.
Hyperist local. That's, you know, I just stay creating words. Is because we don't know what is the relationship or what is the moment that finally cracks the thing open, you know? Yes. I always think back to, and you know, I have it right here on my computer.
Yeah, I know you too.
You know, I have it right here on my computer, but I don't
even know what you're talking about, but I trust that you have
just know. You just know. I think back to the manifesto that is read on Andor that's written by the character Karis Nemec. And he says, and know this, the day will come when all these skirmishes and battles.
These moments of defiance will have flooded the banks of the Empire's authority, and then there will be one too many.
One single thing will break the siege.
Remember this. Try.
And it's like, that's what's dope about having a solidarity mindset is that we're, you know, we talk all the time about playing our position. The thing about playing your position is that it's not about like humility for the sake of like false humility. It's about humility to understand that we actually can't know in the grand scheme what the actual point of breaking is. You know, it's it's not for us to know. We have to have the humility to be able to say like, it's not actually for me to know what the grand design is. It is for me to play the position I can play inside of that design, knowing that it does come. Like empire is incredibly fragile. And one of the things that we've been talking about a lot, or I feel like I'm hearing lots of people talk about, is also how fragile fascism specifically is, and how often it is the case that it cracks under its own weight because of how fragile, how brittle of a system fascism as an ideology creates, right? It's actually not possible for it to sustain itself. That's the nature of a fascistic ideology. And so we don't want to be like sacrificing generations of people to it. So it's, I'm not arguing for like a deflated collapse in the face of it, but there is some strategy to the going underground. There's strategy to playing dead sometimes. There's strategy to, like lying in wait.
Yes.
For the right opportunity.
Yeah. And I think there's something around satisfaction that's bubbling up for me right now, which is like, when you're up against these systems that feel so total, that's one of the things that fascism, it tries to present this like total. There's no room for you to be yourself or to go up against this.
Right.
It feels like no action I can take will satisfy me against that. It's too big and I'm too small and I can't possibly do that, which I think is an anxiety producing. It heightens it, right? It's like, I can't even do anything. I can't even stop them. Like it's like, I've been feeling that where I'm watching it. I'm like, they're literally deporting people and I can't get like, I'm like, what could I do as my one body?
Right.
But then I'm like, drop down into my breath, look around and be like, who's already organizing around deportation, around immigration, around trans life, around abortion, who's already organizing? They've already been thinking about this a ton, and they do need me to give some attention. And you can find satisfying action when you take the leadership of folks who have been like, we've been thinking about this.
Right.
We actually do understand the landscape and there is something you can do, but you're going to have to bring your brain down off the whole big old thing and figure out like, I'm a member of a community. What is a satisfying action that I could actually take right now?
Right.
And it's one of the ways I'm like able to sleep at night where I'm like, all of this is unfolding, but I am taking satisfying actions each day that directly move against it. And I'm also so glad you brought up Andor. I feel like everyone really needs to watch that right now because it's a Star Wars spinoff that is about a society in which Empire is further along in their control than we are currently, but not much, but like further along.
With a very fragile bureaucracy.
Very fragile bureaucracy, but violent,
very violent,
fragile bureaucracy. And so it's like acts of resistance are often, they cost someone their lives or they cost you your home or they cost you, being able to exist where you are. You have to leave. And I've been thinking a lot about that I'm like, oh yeah, like we're heading into a place where we have to think about like, what are the risks we are willing to take? And what are the risks that we expect others to take? When I see people being like, why aren't you doing anything? It's like, risk is actually so personal. And if you don't feel like anyone's at your back, it's so much harder to take those risks. Right. So much harder to do that act of bravery and to sustain any opposition. The Montgomery bus boycott didn't work because one person was like, I sit down on a bus. It worked because a ton of people were like, we're all going to sustain and share the risk of this to make it have impact.
For over a year.
For over a year, we're going to do this. Winter,
it's right.
Rain.
There's that element too of like when we retell these stories, we actually need to retell the whole story so we understand what people were really up to.
Yes, and what they were willing to do, right?
What they were willing to do.
That's always. I think the civil rights movement is one of our greatest teachers in terms of like excellent actions that produced excellent results amongst people who are like, we're acting very locally, but in a way that we know the story will be told because we're doing something that is pretty bombastic as a risk.
Right.
We're going to go sit at this lunch counter. We're going to make sure pictures get taken. You're going to have to now see that a white person and a black person are sitting together at this lunch table. And you're going to have to see how people reacted to that. And I keep thinking about that for this time, or like, what are those subversive actions? What are those creative actions, creative risks? But then also, how do we show each other, like, I've got your back? And I think that's the biggest move the shift we need to make right now is like going from like, I can't wait to critique you to like, I can't wait to have your back.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah. And I wonder about it'd be cool, I think, to think about and maybe tell some stories about when we've seen that in action, like solidarity stories of when we've really seen people show up for each other.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things when I was with the Ruckus Society, one of my favorite things was watching is like the network understood this, but watching it deepen into understanding that there were some people who had more privilege and others who had less, and that we had to actually start taking our actions with that in mind and seeing these beautiful acts of solidarity where people who had white skin privilege and U.S. citizenship were taking these really powerful, bombastic actions in solidarity with Tibet, for instance, being like, we're going to do a banner drop off of the Golden Gate Bridge, and we can do it. We can take the arrest, and we can get everyone's attention on this issue that someone who is here possibly as an immigrant, someone who's here because they've been displaced from their homeland, someone who's here like kind of at the mercy of the powers here. Where like, if I'm a Black or brown or Tibetan person and I try to take this action, the results could be much more devastating for me. And I feel like, though, to me, direct action is always one of the places I look to for that beautiful solidarity. And one of the beautiful aspects of it is when people are like, I have a little something that I can throw in the pot that's like a little privilege that this society wants to give me that I'm going to now relinquish or risk on behalf of someone other than myself.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's a great example.
Yeah. What comes up for you?
One of the things that's coming to mind right now, which is kind of far in the past and from a sort of different time in my own life as an organizer, but I'm thinking about the work that the Rock Dove Collective did in New York City back in the aught years. This was before the Affordable Care Act was passed. And so it was like at a time when the rates of people being underinsured were so much higher, right? And we put together this network of practitioners that included both like in-system medical care practitioners and out-of-system, like, you know, naturopathic, homeopathic, or like, you know, traditional indigenous medicine practitioners. And, you know, the idea with our mutual aid network of care was for people to have a way to access services of various kinds without it, regardless of their ability to pay, right? And for the medically licensed practitioners in our network, obviously engaging in a practice like that came at some considerable risk for their licensure, right?
Yeah.
And we came up with this really cool hack where we set up a system that kind of functioned like a time bank model so that people could put services into the system and get services out of the system, but they didn't have to go one-to-one. So it was like, like if I'm putting something that someone needs into the system, like, I don't know, dog walking or babysitting, and then I'm able to get out of the system medical care from a professional who's giving it to me for free. Because they have a need being met by someone else in the system, and that's the exchange. So there is an exchange happening that's making it possible to free up that time without money being exchanging hands, but it's also not creating the same level of risk for the medical practitioner who is engaging in the system, right? And so it was like kind of recognizing that even people with more economic privilege engaging in a system like that, they still have their risks that they're having to mitigate for. And how can we as an organizing team figure out how to help them mitigate whatever risk they're taking in order to engage in this like alternative system of care? And and it was like pretty functional. You know what I mean? It was like, and it was, you know, it was time bound. It wasn't like it doesn't exist anymore. It wasn't a permanent system. And it changed in large part because of our federal government making a different set of policy decisions that made medical care more accessible to people.
Yeah. But I think that's great. You know, I remember Paula Rojas wrote about this in The Revolution Will Not Be Funded. She has an essay, Are the Cops in Our Heads or in Our Hearts? And but she talks about how in Latin America, she's like, movements arise as needed, programs arise as needed, and then they move as adaptations happen. And as you're telling the rock dove story, I'm like, that's exactly how it's supposed to happen. Like, instead of being like, rock dove must exist forever and get like institutionalized funding, it's like, no, this existed because this was the condition for our healthcare.
Right.
And then when the conditions shifted, we adapted to something else.
Right. And actually it was really interesting for us as a political project. We very intentionally resisted being paid for the work that we were doing. It was like a really important part of the politics of that project to not institutionalize, to never be fiscally sponsored, to never get paid to do the work that we did. And I feel like that was a critical element of our ability to be visionary, right? Was that not having any of our economic needs tied to the political project. And it was part of why we were then able to sunset when it was appropriate to sunset, because there was no need to keep the institution going. And I think that I'm glad that you like picked that part out of the story too, because I feel like that's also one of these pieces of solidarity that, you know, when we think about like what are some of the cultural pieces that we need to invite back into our current movement ecosystem to make solidarity more possible. I think there is something about like deinstitutionalizing, you know, like really feeling ourselves to be like in the work in a way that is not connected to the economics of our own lives. We all need to get bread and we all need to feed our families. And like, I'm not saying like, you know, give up your job, but rather I'm saying like, what would it look like to have our solidarity work not be tied to our jobs?
I love that. And it also makes me think like, what does it mean to have solidarity tied specifically to care, right? Where it's like, you might not be doing solidarity work all the time, but if you're someone who can provide care into movement work, into an effort, you know, for whatever reason, I was thinking of Standing Rock, you know, and I'm like, oh yeah, there were warriors that went to Standing Rock and who were like, we're moving these front lines and taking actions. But there was so many people who came to provide care. There were people who were like, we're driving in because we know how to do medical care. We know how to, you know, create food for tons and tons of people. We know how to build structures for people to sleep in, structures for bathrooms, and how to help people remember that you can live off the land and with the resources that we bring to the table. And actually, so many of my favorite solidarity actions are ones in which basically what people did was make a community.
Literally.
Like, you know what? We're just going to make a community right here in the middle of the city, or right here in this field, or right here where you're trying to build this pipeline, or, you know, just right in the center where you think you're in control, but you can't control this. We're actually creating a community, and you may be able to displace us at some point, but you can't stop the practice of community that has now entered our bones. You know, when people are part of those kinds of solidarity actions where you build community in a space and declare we are here, people never forget that.
It's hard to forget that. It's hard to
become something you're longing for, right? And that again is like, if you're like, oh, I'm not ready for the solidarity of risk necessarily, maybe you're ready for the solidarity of care. Maybe the next time you hear there's an encampment and you're like, I'm not ready to go be a part of the direct action, but I could take brownies or I could take bags of, you know, food. I'm sure you shouldn't just take any old brownies because people put stuff in brownies, but you can bring water and packaged foods, and you could be someone who brings your medical support, medical services, or, you know, therapeutic support or other kinds of care to bear in those spaces that then help those who are already ready for the risk level of solidarity to sustain their work.
And there is a thing too about, I think some of what gets in the way for people is that, I mean, it hurts my heart even to say it out loud, but there's a thing that happens inside of us where we feel like we have nothing to offer. You know, there's like a way that people don't believe in themselves. They don't believe that they have anything to give. They don't believe that they have anything that's worthwhile to show up with. And I think we forget sometimes this is a grief-filled time, and it can be easy to forget that actually just being present, often just coming alongside and accompanying is the most powerful thing that you can offer in a grief-filled time, you know? And
so
being available
and being
when
able to feel.
Right. Right. Being able to,
or like, yeah.
I'm
I was
remembering
thinking about this last year. Yeah, you go ahead. Your memory first, and then I'll share a memory.
Well,
too.
I'm just remembering being you and I being at the AMC together. This would have been 2017 because it was the year that we started the podcast. And there was
Venus in retrograde.
Right. Oh. And it was there was a year of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Miami, and that had just happened days before the conference started, and we held a ceremony outside. And I remember that we had like ceremonial water because we had poured libations during the ceremony. And I remember having an experience where I just channeled something during the ceremony. It was very, very intense and had to be like held by other people. It was one of my first experiences of just being the channel for a collective grief that was being experienced by everyone. And then I remember that we took the ceremonial water to the river to pour it out. And then I immediately started bleeding. Like my period just like started as soon as we poured out the ceremonial water. And it was one of those intense moments of realizing, all of that was solidarity in grief. Like all of that was a solidarity of grief, of helping to process collective grief in a particular setting, but also on behalf of many more people than just those who were present at the ceremony, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's how ceremony is.
Exactly.
Yeah. I really feel that ceremony happens on behalf of the collective. And it is beautiful. It is a gift if you are someone who's like, oh yeah, part of what I can do is channel. I'm like, almost everyone can. Like if you can go someplace and be like, I'm willing to feel
as evidenced by my story, you don't have to know.
Exactly. You don't have to know or think you can do it. You know, and I'm also thinking of art, which feels connected to the grief, connected to channel. But like, you know, last year we were trying to pass the ceasefire resolution here in Durham. And I remember having this distinct feeling of like, I don't have anything to offer anymore. Like I'm not connected to this or that other thing. And I don't have anything. And then my community calling on me and being like, hey, could you come offer a poem or offer a song? Like it would really be meaningful if you could just do that. And I was like, yeah, like literally all I've been doing is crying. So
and channeling songs.
Channeling songs, crying and writing these poems. And like it was just so beautiful to be invited to be like, hey, we see you and we see what you're doing and it has a place and we can plug it in to what we're doing here. And there's other people who are like, I don't write songs or I don't do, you know, that's not how it moves in me, but I can stand up and give a testimony or I can do this or I can do, it's just like, oh, if you think that you can't do anything, then it's time to actually go to a meeting and go sit down with other organizers. Yeah. And by the time you're done, they'll have figured out something that you can do.
Right.
You know, this is why I'm like, yeah, if you just show up to the meeting, if you show up, there will be something that you can do. But I often think of the finer task, you know, I'm like, note-taking is solidarity. Data management is solidarity. Being the person who calls the folks who are not online to make sure they also show up. That's solidarity. Reaching out to your family to be like, do y'all know about this stuff that's happening? That's solidarity. Like, I do think I think what we're landing on is like helping people activate that there is something you can do, if you will do it, that is absolutely needed. And if you start to think of yourself as like something necessary and precious, and that like you're Adela Nieves, one of our beloved friends and teachers, I remember her sort of grabbing me at a certain moment and being like, we are here right on time. We were chosen to be here at this time for this purpose. Woo! We're on time. Each of us is absolutely necessary and on purpose. We just have to recognize it so that we can serve our purpose. And it's that, you know, phenomenon. It's like everyone, there's work of your time and there's something specific that you were given to do in this time. And partially maybe it's like solidarity is on the other side of recognizing that. Once you recognize that, you'll be able to do so many kinds of solidarity and you'll feel less anxiety as you do it because you'll be like, I am having action that is impactful and I'm part of a community that is not scared to change the world.
Hell yeah. What a beautiful note to end on. I love it. I'm like, I have nothing to add. That's perfect.
We dropped the mic.
We dropped the mic. We dropped the mic. We dropped the mic. We knew when it dropped on the ground because it boom, boom, made a sound.
Wait.
bones, shake these bones, oh, we're gonna shake these bones, shake these bones, oh, we're gonna shake these
Thanks
bones,
for listening
shake
to our
these
show.
bones,
We're on Instagram at End of the World PC, and we're also on Blue Sky as ourselves.
You can make a sustaining donation to our show by visiting our page at patreon.com/endoftheworldshow.
Another incredible thing you can do to help our show sustain itself is to write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're an iPhone person, this helps people looking for good new content to find us, and we're the best new content. So thank you.
But if people are not iPhone people, I always just want to make room to say you should also go places and write about us and say things about us. So I just want to say that.
Yeah.
How to Survive the World is produced and edited by Big Zaddy Zach Rosen, and the transcripts are in our show notes and on our website at endoftheworldshow.org.
I just want to highlight the thing you just said, which is how to survive the world, and it's perfect.
Oh, shit.
Music to...
I mean, we're
We're
getting to that place. Okay.
Music for today's show comes from Autumn, Tunde Alaniran, and the Banksims.
Shake these bones, shake
We're
these
gonna
bones.
shake this bones, shake this bones.
I never get tired of shaking these bones.
All right. We
See you
did
next
it!
I think that was one of our best shows ever, sister.